The word diversity became the new buzzword in 2020 following the murder of George Floyd. Businesses and organizations across the country rushed to declare a renewed commitment to adding more people of color to their ranks. Certain industries lived up to their promises, but others failed miserably. Today, we are examining how the multi-billion-dollar entertainment industry did with its efforts to diversify. Experts weigh in, coming up next.
Live from Los Angeles, this is the Special Report with Areva Martin.
In a recent survey by the National Research Group and the Oprah Winfrey Network, 93% of all participants said they want to see more complex portrayal of Black people on the screen. One of the participants in that study is here. Joining me is Cindy Smith. She is the Vice President, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Practice Group for the National Research Group, and returning guest to the special report. Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning, Areva, and thank you for inviting me to share my thoughts.
Yeah, this interesting report. There have been a couple of diversity reports out, Cindy, over the last 6 months or so that I've had an opportunity to review. One is by Dr. Darnell Hunt over at UCLA. He does an annual diversity report. I think he's been doing it for about 9 or 10 years now, where he looks at the numbers. Where are studios with respect to the numbers of people of color in front of and behind the screen. And from his latest report from 2020, I had an opportunity to interview him a couple of months ago. He said that there was significant progress as it relates to people of color in certain categories, particularly in folks appearing on television shows as well as in movies. But he said there was still a lot of work to be done with respect to who green lights projects. Who are those executives that makes the decisions about what gets shown and what doesn't get shown? And definitely very little diversity in terms of the senior level management at most production companies and most entertainment companies. So I want to, use that as the backdrop in terms of what Dr. Hunt found to talk about the key findings from your study. So just kind of walk us through what you guys found, the National Research Group and Oprah Winfrey Network, in the study that you commissioned.
Yes, thank you, Areva. And speaking to Dr. Hunt and his report, that is one of the things that, as you said, he's been doing it for a number of years, and the numbers are there. There has been change. There's been forward movement. However, Hollywood still has a way to go in achieving true diversity amongst the ranks of the executives and the people that are greenlighting the project. So we partnered with Oprah Winfrey Network, who's one of our valuable partners. And what they wanted to do was really dig into the minds of the Black woman and find out what it is that she needs to feel valued. It's internal, but it's also external. And the media has such a great influence on how Black people are portrayed. So we talked to various experts and Black women across the United States earlier this spring to get an understanding as to their needs, what they want. And as you said, the value of representation is so very important. And it's not just the quantity, it's the quality of the representation.
No, really interesting point. So I led with that stat that came right from the report that 93% of the participants in your study said they wanted to see more complex portrayal of Black people. So what do they mean by complex portrayal?
Well, oftentimes we see the extremes. We see the stories of struggle and pain, and those tend to be the stories, if they're acknowledged at all in the awards. It's about slavery, it's about overcoming, but there's nuance in the middle. Seeing the lived Black experience of everyday life. That's what people want to see. We can be funny, we can be smart, and we just want to be portrayed, as normal human beings.
Walk us through some of the other findings, Cindy, in the report. I find it to be incredibly fascinating. What else were Black women saying to you? I know you actually had an opportunity to interview media experts and others that work in the entertainment field. Was there one message that you heard over and over again from those experts?
Yeah, well, the thing, I guess, the beauty of this research was that these Black women believe that change is possible.
Mm.
But they feel that this, again, we have a long way to go, and media really has the power to influence how we are seen around the world. So, as you said, 93% say change is needed, but the thing that I gave me hope is that they believe it is possible.
Mm-hmm.
But as you discussed, it's the complex portrayals on screen. We want to see us in roles where we're thriving and living, not just trying to survive and overcome. So, get away from the typical tropes that we've seen in the past. They also need people of color to be behind the scenes making the decisions. We want to own the narrative that is telling our story to the world. And that's one of the areas where I think Hollywood has a long way to go in terms of getting people of color in the writer's room, green lighting projects, making casting decisions. It goes down to hair and wardrobe and makeup. We need Black people in all aspects of production. And that came through loud and clear in this report.
Did the participants in the report feel as if there had been less progress made in those roles? The behind the scene roles, the writers, the directors, the producers, they feel like that was an area that was lacking versus, on camera talent?
Yeah, that was the area where people felt like we could have the most impact is behind the scenes, because if you're an actor, you're following a script. Mm-hmm. So we need people that are the creatives that are coming up, that are telling the stories and telling the stories authentically. We need people directing, producing, again, just in how we look on screen with the hair and makeup. It's very important. I can't say it enough that we need Black people in all levels, all aspects of production, from the time the story is written until it's released to the public.
Cindy, were there any surprises? Anything that's shocked you as you were interviewing the experts, the participants in the study, or anything that came out of the study? Anything shocking?
I wish I could say there was something shocking, but we have been saying this for years and years. Give us the mic. Not only should you give us the mic, listen to us and take action. So the things that came out, I have to say, I've heard it time and time again in research. In terms of Black women, they're expected to be stronger. They're portrayed on screen as being, this superpower, and they want to be vulnerable. Mm-hmm. Again, we can't say it enough in terms of, moving away from stereotypes, showing a variety of skin colors, people working in a variety of professions, and just having a say-so. So to answer your question, nothing was shocking, unfortunately.
I'm glad you brought up the skin color. I just had the most bizarre experience myself with skin color. So, I'm a legal commentator. I work for CNN. And so mm-hmm. I was commenting on the Ahmaud Arbery murder trial, the 3 men who were convicted. I was on TV a lot talking about that. And this woman wrote me an email and said, I agree with your commentary, Areva, blah, blah, blah. But it really pained me to watch a Black woman who had bleached her skin. Oh. She said, had bleached her skin and colored her hair to be talking about a dark-skinned Black man talking about Ahmaud Arbery. I had like 1,200 different things I was going to say back to this woman. I eventually said nothing because, right. That's what you should do to idiots, right? You should just ignore them.
Yes.
But I've been accused of a lot of things. I've never, ever been accused of bleaching my skin. Of course, I've never bleached why would I bleach my skin? Like, lady, are you insane? So the notion that people see Black women or people as being a particular shade and that being the only shade, obviously we've got a lot of work to do, because this woman thought the fact that I look the way that I look meant that I bleached my skin. So
Yeah, I have no words for that either, Areva. And I think you were correct. Silence is golden in that sense. But it definitely has come up because I talk to Black consumers all the time in terms of content viewing and what they want to see, and that does come up time and time again. We've made progress. We are seeing more Black and brown faces on screen, but we want to see the variety because, as you know, if you look around the room, we come in all shapes, sizes, and colors, and that's the thing that they're calling for. Again, it's be authentic so that you can see the true lived experience of Black women everywhere, not just a certain type.
So Cindy, now you have this data, you have this information. How will your organization and the OWN network use this information?
Well, with OWN specifically, they are taking this information to use, for their content creators and looking at their decision making in terms of greenlighting projects, but also with their brands and their advertisers, because it's very important. As you know, we need advertisers to survive, and getting the word out to them that Black women have buying power, but they are only going to participate in the economy with companies that are going to portray them in a positive light and show them in a variety of ways. Again, not just focused on one particular body type or skin color. So this was information. As we know, information is power, and the Oprah Winfrey Network, I applaud them because they know their audience, but they also wanted to know more and how they could bridge the gap with their advertisers so that they are presenting authentic products and services to their viewers.
Have you, the National Research Group, have you guys done this kind of research with any other network other than OWN?
Yes. A lot of the work that we do is confidential and proprietary. So I, again, applaud OWN for allowing us to share this with the world. But yes, we work with all of the major networks, the streamers. I can name clients, BET. They've just released their BET Plus and are looking for content. So we've been engaged in helping them as well in terms of decision making and things that their viewers want to see. But, Amazon Prime, Netflix, we work with all the major studios and networks. And I really applaud them for coming to us and saying, hey, we need help. Help us, get the message out in the correct way.
Now, does your organization follow up after you deliver the report to see if the change, if changes are actually made? The recommendations that come out of your reports, do you all do, any follow up to see if they're implemented, the recommendations?
We do, because fortunately we have a ongoing relationship with our clients because of the work we do, they value. So oftentimes we will do follow-up studies or go back and find out if what we said, what action was taken, did it make a difference? So yes, we do. Because we go ahead.
What?
I would say we will continue to engage with the Oprah Winfrey Network moving forward, as well as BET and some of the other networks.
So given that you do this follow-up work, what's the most significant change that you've seen over the last, couple of years? We talked about George Floyd at the beginning having, such a catalytic experience for all of us and caused organizations and particularly Hollywood to say, look, we've got to do better. We have to do more. That just happened March of 2020. I know we're just at the beginning of 2022, but can you say there's been any significant shifts or changes, since George Floyd's murder?
Yes, I can. I see, because I work with a lot of the streamers. I see that they are greenlighting more projects, and also the networks. If you look at ABC, they've released Queens in the last year. Let's see, we've got Kings of Napa just came out on Oprah Winfrey Network yesterday. And some of these projects have been in development with Amazon Prime, the Underground Railroad, Harlem. So I'm seeing a lot more shows that are targeted towards Black people, but it's not just for Black people because the shows aren't about being Black. I think about the Wonder Years. That reboot, that was just, a family growing up facing challenges, and they just happened to be Black.
Right. It's so important because as you said, the Wonder Years, I'm thinking about Roseanne and shows like that were just about families, middle-class families going about their lives and dealing with the issues of, child dynamics, marriage dynamics, job dynamics. And it didn't matter what color they were. It's just family dynamics.
Yeah, and I would say that is the biggest change that I've seen. Again, in the numbers, I've seen more shows, but also they're not just focused on struggle and pain.
And just finally, Cindy, if there was one thing that you wish, if you could wave a magic wand that you wish studios would do, what would that be in this moment?
What I wish that they would do, because they've taken strides, they've asked the questions. Now I want them to not only ask the question, I want them to listen to the answers and then take action.
Hmm. Interesting point. Good point. Well, hopefully, the research that you guys have done with OWN, they will do exactly what you said, listen to the responses and take action, and some of those others that you're working with as well. But thank you for doing this important work. So important. Black women, obviously, unfortunately, we find ourselves being made invisible in so many situations. So to see a study that really centers Black women and recognizes our incredible buying power and purchasing power, and how we are leading those decisions in most households across this
Yes.
country. That your organization, Oprah Winfrey, recognize that power and are giving us an opportunity to voice what it is we want to see in the TV and film space. So thank you so much, Cindy, for that work.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, Areva.
And next, I'm going to talk to an actor. He knows firsthand what it's like to work in Hollywood, and what has changed or not changed over the decade or so that he's been working both in film and TV. His name is Donnell Turner. You've seen him on just a long list of shows, including soap operas, General Hospital, Days of Our Lives. You've also seen him in Criminal Minds, Parks and Recreation, CSI, and the list goes on and on. And he's here today to help us understand diversity from an actor standpoint. Good morning and welcome, Donnell.
Good morning, Areva. Thank you for having me.
So, Donnell, you have an interesting career. Man, I was looking at all your credits and the list is long. So, first of all, congratulations. This is not an easy industry for anyone, but particularly a young man, Black man growing up in Chicago. So, tell us, how you got your first big break in the entertainment industry.
Okay. Thank you. First, let's see. It was a long journey, and it just started with unshakable faith and a praying mother. And so I just jumped in. My mentor told me he said, "Why are you going to move to LA?" And it's 98% unemployed. And it's like 99.5 for a Black person, for Black male and female. And I said, well, I believe in my product. And so, I suffered the slings and arrows, but I stuck with it. And I'm grateful to be here. And I'm grateful to be affecting change on the longest running show in television history on General Hospital.
So what is that like? The longest running show in history or television history.
Mm-hmm.
And how has the diversity on that show changed over the years?
Very little, but it's happening. We have about 40 actors, and 20 of them are on contract. 6 of those contracted actors are Black. Mm. And so of all 40 actors, there's probably 8 to 10 Black. So
that's a little over 20%.
Absolutely. And I noticed that. And when I started, the Black actors were upset. They were murmuring. They were disgruntled. And I would say things like, well, did you say anything? And they'd say, well, no.
Hold on. When you started, like what year are you talking now?
I started in 2015 or 14.
And what were they disgruntled about? What were they upset about?
Conditions, representation, storyline. Mm-hmm. And when I asked, did they say anything? They said no, because they were convinced nothing would be done, because historically nothing had been done. Mm-hmm. And so I spoke up. I said something. One year I was asked to be Grand Marshal at the Inglewood Martin Luther King Day Parade. Mm-hmm. And I had to work on that day. So I went to the executive producer and I told him, I said, this is the first time I've worked on Dr. King Day in 12 years. I said, I'll do it today. But in the future, for myself and all people of color on this set, can we please have this day off? I'll be more than happy to work on Columbus Day.
Okay.
And
probably work on President's Day too.
All of those, yeah. And so You know, honestly, the executive producer, he was, it looked like he got hit with a bucket of cold water. He apologized. And not only the people of color, but the whole show now shuts down and has for the last 6 years on Dr. King Day.
And no one had ever brought that to his
No one had
attention.
brought it up. No one had brought it up. So sometimes it is subconscious bias. Sometimes there are the microaggressions. Sometimes it's systemic and intentional and malicious. But then sometimes it's just ignorance.
Yeah. Tell us, you talked about storylines because Cindy just said in the study, what Black women in that own study said was they wanted to see more complex roles. They wanted to see more authentic storytelling. Give us some examples of some of the storylines that you believe were not authentic and how those storylines could have been changed to be more authentic.
This is right up my alley. Hold on, I'm gonna take off my glasses. So last July, I had a meeting with the head writers. I said, I've been on your show 6 years. The fans have received me. And I was warned it's still very racist for the fans, the industry, the fan base. They like what they like. And so to have proven myself meant something, but I was still walking around this TV show shining shoes, you know, metaphorically. There were no complex storylines. There were no Black people in leadership positions. So when I talk to the writers, which is rare, they don't talk to the actors. I let them know. I said, hey, listen, there's no leadership. I said, the Black men are portrayed a certain way. I see them moving for Black women, but meanwhile, there's a familiar stereotype with the Black men. We're shiftless, we're lazy, there's no leadership. We need the Black women to bail us out. We're walking around town saying yes, taking orders, shining shoes, essentially. I said, this is after 2020, an uprising that we had in 2020. I said, we have the privilege and indeed the responsibility to shape how we're seen. I said, this is a make-believe world where I could fly in every scene on a dragon. And yet I still find, we still notice that the Black characters are second-class citizens, even in a mythical world. They apologized.
Wow.
I gave them examples. I said, there's no father figures. And so I had 3 pages of notes. And I said, there's no father figures. And, you know, there's 3 Black men on the show, only me. I've been the only Black man on contract for the last 5 years. There are no Black writers, no Black producers, no Black directors.
Help us understand, Donnell, what that means when you say you're on contract. The other people, they get paid, right?
They get paid, but they're recurring. So they don't always get called. I'm on a guaranteed contract for, you know, 4 years.
So they get
so
called on certain episodes, but not regularly. Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
And so they apologize. I said, I know how subconscious bias works. I know how microaggressions work, but you guys are writing things. There was one episode where my auntie, the great Vernee Watson, she calls me a boy, you know, and I thought that was an interesting microaggression. And even she said, I'm not saying this, you know, you're a grown man. And so when I brought these issues to the writers, they were not aware how they were writing. They saw it. They apologized to me. They said that they recognized it took great courage to say what I said. And since then, we're about 8 weeks from when they write it to when we perform it. 8 weeks later, my storylines have changed. If you watch General Hospital, you will see more inclusion, more representation, more complex storylines. I had to remind them that just because our skin tone is a little different, when you pinch us, we say ouch too. So it's not really that hard to write for us.
Donnell, tell us, for those of us that don't get to watch you regularly, we should, and we will from now on, but that haven't been able to, what were your storylines before you had this very candid conversation with the writers?
Sure. I was a former DEA agent, former Baltimore PD, who had lost his job due to drugs, who was now marrying his sister-in-law, who had cheated on her, my brother, you know, stuff like that.
You're messy.
It's messy, it's a soap, and I get it. But they have to tip lightly when they only have 6 of us. They have to be careful to not write towards stereotypes. Deadbeat dad, cheater, player,
Drug addict, yeah.
And so my storylines involve me being impulsive and wily, but not intellectual skilled, or, you know, and And my storylines involved me doing tennis matches, essentially, where I would listen to non-Black people talk and make decisions, and I would do this in scenes. And then I'd say one line like, so what do you think this means? Well, couldn't it be a coincidence? And there was no, decision making. There was no leadership from my position, And
So now fast forward, after you go stand up, speak up, advocate, what are some of those new storylines looking like?
Sure. My character owns a nightclub. My character has final say-so in scenes. I actually have
business owner now. You're business owner.
Business owner. I dress a certain way now. I wear suits. I'm refined. We have real complex storylines that are not as messy. It's easy to have. For instance, I told them I don't have a father. No Black person on the show has a father. So they got my character a father. And I said, please. Now it's illegal for actors to pitch storylines. So I phrased it in a way. How about if we? And so that was, I guess, legal. I said, how about my dad being witness protection instead of a deadbeat dad? Give him something that is not a stereotype, a familiar.
Reason for him to be away that doesn't play into the stereotype. So he did something good. He helped the government. And so he's been in hiding.
Yes, and it was out of his hands versus, oh, Lord, I got kids, I got to go.
Right.
And so they heard that. We're in the middle of that right now.
So your dad, you wanted a dad because I hope in these storylines, you're going to be talking to your dad, right? Like getting advice, like doing what people do with their fathers. Like,
I was so excited. Exactly. I wanted this character to have a father figure, a sound, sage father figure, and not a deadbeat asking me for money, trying to get in on my character's nightclub. So they've done that. They've heard me. We have good, solid relationships. And I told them, I don't think we need any more yelling, Black people yelling on camera, because they started that as well with my father and I. And I said, listen, we're not going to yell. We're going to discuss. So there's more discourse and less acrimony. I think it's more interesting. It's a lot more fun. I feel heard. I feel included.
Donnell, do you think this would have happened but for George Floyd and the national conversation we've been having about race and racism?
I don't think so, because I had a meeting 4 years ago, different head writers, but they looked me in the face, they nodded, and nothing changed. So I held up 2020 to the writers this time. I said, we all learned something in 2020, and now we have the responsibility to reflect what we've learned and to represent people of color accurately and fully.
Now, you just explained, your very personal experience in your position as an actor on this show. I'm imagining that you have lots of friends that work on other shows. Are they recounting to you very similar experiences where they are seeing writers and producers and directors being more open to telling these more complex stories and changing some of these stereotypes?
Well, as far as in the soap world, I don't know many of the other actors. I watch them occasionally, and I watch what's happening and what's not happening. Fortunately and unfortunately, other soap operas have always been ahead of General Hospital and inclusion. So we were sort of the last ones to get on board. But that's it across the board. I am seeing a lot more diversity. I just watched The Harder They Fall. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed what I really liked about The Harder They Fall, if you don't mind me digressing for a bit, was that they were in a Western movie, but they weren't trying to act like John Wayne or Clint Eastwood. Yeah. They were talking the way we probably talked back then, which I really, really appreciated.
Very authentic voices in that. I love that story because they also centered women, because, in most traditional white Westerns, women have a very stereotypical role. Like they're the saloon girl, right?
Saloon whore,
saloon girl, i.e. prostitute. But in this movie, they gave women, particularly the younger character who was super powerful. She was like running the whole show, and then of course Regina King had such a powerful role. Let's talk about green lighting and executives, because that was one of the areas in the study by the National Research Group, as well as Dr. Darnell Hunt at UCLA, says, look, we've had some significant progress of talent before, in front of the camera, in both TV and film. We've even had some progress with respect to writers and producers and directors. Obviously not enough, but there's been progress. But they said the one area that has been stubbornly resistant to change has been those executives that make the decision about what stories get told, who gets to be in those stories. How have you seen that evolve in any way since you've been in this industry over the last decade or so?
I have. It's still slow moving, but I have seen it change. I've seen progress. But it is slow moving. Okay. And I did a Christmas movie this past year, and pleased to be a part of a movie that, and I've always wanted to do films, television shows where it didn't matter if I was Black or not.
Right.
Just a well-written Christmas romantic comedy. And they could have taken the 2 Black leads out and put in 2 Asian leads. I like that more, so I feel like that's progress. We didn't have to have a barbecue, barbershop, any kind of struggle, no gang fights.
No choir, no church scene, no pastor.
Exactly. As much as I love all that and grew up with all of that, we've seen it ad nauseum. So I'm a filmmaker myself. I'm in school at Los Angeles Film Academy. I'm in my 3rd year, 4.0. And those are the kind of films.
I got that in my notes. See, you jumped the gun. See, that's
my bad.
Actors do. I'm sitting here looking at, you're in film school, 4.0 GPA. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It means it was important because as an actor, you do sit and you wait for your hand to get picked. Mm-hmm. And autonomy meant a little bit more to me, especially when they're not picking people all the time who look like you.
Right.
And I've been in lobbies at auditions, and I've had the white actors look at me and tell me I'm lucky to be Black because it's harder as a white person. And so let's talk about the tide turning. Now, when they're doing breakdowns for characters, they're saying, hey, we're looking for an Idris Elba type. We're looking for a Kerry Washington type. 15 years ago, they never said that. Even when they were casting Black people, it was always, we're looking for Julia Roberts type. We're looking for Paul Rudd. And I would think, well, this is a Black audition. So progress, it's slow, but those things are important. And so I've had white people.
Those roles where they're looking for Idris type, you could do that, right?
I would like to think so.
You could have been in The Harder They Fall.
Yes. I would love to do a Western. That would be live.
So, okay, great. You're in film school. You're a super student. You're super smart. So you're not just acting chops. You got, big brain chops as well. What are you hoping to accomplish once you graduate and now you're the decision making, you're making film, you're bringing cast together, you're storytelling. What kind of stories do you want to tell? Do you think need to be told that we're not seeing enough of?
Well, just smart stories that are important to me. But smart stories, pinch, ouch. I mean, things that people can feel and relate to regardless of color, regardless of culture. Now, I do want to reflect the culture because we do things differently, and that needs an understanding, but I don't need the whole movie to drive that point home. I would love to make sitcoms and television. I would love to do period pieces and all of that. I love Harder They Fall or Bridgerton and things like that. I would love to make fantasy and make-believe films with Black characters. I get often asked, would I like to be a Black Batman? Donnell, you could be the first Black Batman. And I say, well, I would love to be the first Black superhero. I don't want to be, a white superhero made Black. Why don't we just make a Black superhero?
Right.
So things like that. So I want to be a part of that kind of change. I want to be a part of smart television and film. Buffoonery has its place. Maybe it's overdue. Maybe it's overplayed. And I would like to see smart movies. I remember there was a movie years ago called Brown Sugar. And the first time I saw that, I knew then, those are the kind of movies I want to make.
Yeah. Great movie. Could have been, it wasn't a Black movie. It's a movie about hip hop and love. It was
absolutely smart movie.
Really good movie. What do you think it's going to take? So the box office before COVID,
sure,
people of color were the biggest consumers of movies at the box office. study by Dr. Hunt shows that people of color are the biggest consumers of television shows. And his study also shows that when there are more Black characters in television and film, people of color watch them more, consume them more. So the economic case is there. The financial piece is there. What do you think it's going to take to, break down this last bastion, this holdout? We're seeing progress in some areas, but what is it going to get to take to really break down those senior level executive positions that, those are the gatekeepers?
Sure. I wish I knew. I wish I had all the answers, but in my opinion, I think we just gotta, there's an expression, YOLO Coco, K-O-K-O, you only live once, keep on keeping on. We got to keep on keeping on. We got to keep our foot on the pedal, but we got to do smart work. When we bang on the door and the door gets open, we got to have something smart to say. We just can't keep marching and protesting. We got to actually have a plan of action. So I just think that we continue to educate ourselves, and the doors will open slowly, hopefully. But we got to create our own content. We have to be the masters of our own destination, and now we have that opportunity.
You mentioned
more
that
than ever in history.
You mentioned that on your soap there are no Black writers. Do you think when writers, African Americans, do get those positions, how difficult is it for them to do what you did, to say, hey, we need to write a Black father into this? Or do you think once they get into the writer's room, there's so much pressure on them to just conform, to go with, the status quo?
Both. And I have to make a quick addendum. We do now have 3 Black writers. I think there is an acclimation process. I don't think you can come in right away and say, oh, we ain't doing that. I think you have to learn the lay of the land and then affect change. And that's something that, unfortunately, maybe a lot of younger people aren't willing to do. Sometimes you got to learn how things operate, and then you can affect change. So I would say, yes, there is pressure coming in as a writer. Remember, we're 13% of the population versus 70% that is not us. And I see the pressure networks have. I read comments. I still see how racist things are. I tour a lot, and I meet these fans when I go to different cities, and they'll say to the white actors, oh, I loved your storyline. Oh, you moved me. Oh, I loved yours. You helped me through my divorce. You helped me when I was in the hospital. And then they'll come to me and say, when are you taking your shirt off again? Things like that. So I'm keenly aware of,
wait, Donnell. What do you, so they just see you as a sex symbol.
The Black,
stud,
yeah,
mandingo. Oh my God.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And that's a lot. That too is a lot of pressure for the Black actors. When I did this last movie, they kept saying alpha, 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 and I kept saying my alpha is not loud. I don't flex. I don't feel the need. I know more than I say, and that's my alpha. And so we have to get away from that stereotype that every Black man has to be the same way. They have to be, mandingo. We have to be loud, and this is me. Here I am. Said what I said. We too have layers and complexities as well. And so I think that has to be reflected, just the fullness of all Black people. And once we start seeing that we matter and we should be represented wholly, I think a change will be affected as well.
Well, we got to leave it there, Donnell. Thank you. So many incredible insights. I mean, congratulations again on your 4.0.
Hey, thank you.
I'm sure not easy to accomplish while you're working full time, your day job. And I know you're an autism advocate as well. I know you support a lot of charities. You raise money for autism. So you're out there in the community doing so much. You're a public speaker. So you got a lot going on. So I really commend you on finding time to support those kinds of causes that matter in our community, and being a voice and helping us understand what goes on behind the scene. People just turn on television and think it's all, it's just beauty and it's just glamour and everything is perfect. And the lives of actors are just, perfection personified, and don't realize all the struggles that, actors go through just like everyday people.
Absolutely. Areva, and I'd be remiss if I don't say I am grateful for what General Hospital is doing. I've been vilified. I've been maligned by Black people calling me a sellout because I work on an all-white show. And I don't think a lot of people are aware of the battles that are fought behind the scenes. That said, I am grateful for being heard and for us being represented. It is a labor of love what I do, but it does take time. But I am grateful to be in this position at the table affecting change. Thank you for having me on your show. Love what you're doing. Much respect.
I just want to say this to you, Dano. You're vilified for being on an all-white show. I was just accused of bleaching my skin. So welcome to the so, I've never used bleaching cream a day in my life. I'm just a light-skinned Black woman. I can't help it. Talk to my mom and my daddy. But, so welcome to the club. When people are doing anything positive, somebody can find a way. Yesterday they were mad because Maya Angelou was on a quarter. Why couldn't she be on the $20 bill? You know what, people? Okay, progress is progress. Let's celebrate the woman on the quarter. So,
right.
So keep doing what you're doing. There are so many positive voices out there that love and respect you and hear you and see you. The naysayers are just that. They're miserable little people. So we don't even give any energy to them. But we got to continue this conversation. Lots of great insights with you. My best on there. We're going to be checking you out on General Hospital, you and your club and your new dad. Get some sage advice from your new father figure.
Amen. Thank you, Areva.
Okay. My next guest is Reggie Ponder. He is known as the Real Critic. You can hear him on WBEW 91 FM Chicago on Fridays and on my station, KBLA Talk 1580, on Thursdays. Good morning and welcome back, Reggie, to the Special Report.
Areva, how are you? How are you?
I'm fantastic. First of all, Reggie, we got, we're talking about diversity. We're talking about Hollywood. I know you have a lot to say. I got a lot of things I want to ask you about. We got to start with Sidney Poitier. We lost one of entertainment's biggest icons, giants, recently. I was watching some of the things Sidney Poitier said about diversity, about inclusion, about Hollywood, and something really resonated with me when he's, as they were heaping all these accolades on him and, telling him how wonderful he was. He says, look, I'm one Black man and yeah, I may be talented. And I'm kind of paraphrasing what he said. But he says, this is a country with like 300 million people or 200 million, however many. There's some other Black people that can do what I do. And it just was so like, him recognizing, being, humble and in his humility saying, it's not enough just to sit here and praise me for what I do and the talents that I have. We need lots more people that look like me doing what I'm doing. So that's the kind of man Sidney Poitier was. So what are your fondest memories of him?
Firstly, I'm going to beg to differ. Can't nobody do what Sidney Poitier did. Come on now. His point was, I do know his point.
Don't just sit here and say there's only going to be one Black actor.
No, I know. I just want to say though that his impact on life, not just on the movies, his impact on life was humongous. Some people called him the Martin Luther King of cinema. This man, you look at the roles that he played. So let's go to the Defiant Ones. That's not his first one because the first movie was No Way Out. And in No Way Out, he played a Black doctor treating a bigoted white man. In the Defiant Ones with Tony Curtis, here's a guy who plays, they both are convicts, but Sidney Poitier wasn't just like some old Black convict. Sidney Poitier was like, look, you're going to look at me as a man if I'm going to look at you as a man. And that's the kind of roles that this man played. It's so interesting to listen to your prior guests talk about being maligned. Sidney Poitier was also maligned for playing roles that oftentimes only had white people. So he was the only Black person there. But this man knew what he was doing. He was able to speak to the world in terms of how Black people were portrayed. In addition, he was able to speak to Black people and say, look, Stephen Fletcher days, they over. I'm not maligning Stephen Fletcher. He had to do what he had to do. But at the same time, those days are over. I'm going to have my back straight. I'm going to have my head up. And I'm going to bring something different to cinema. I totally agree with you. I'm glad that he says that there's other people, but I also want to say there's nobody like a Sidney Poitier.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. And a friend of mine was reminding me, we saw him once at a restaurant here in Los Angeles, and he had this light about him. I mean, he was regal. If you were in a room with him, we were across the table, and he just lit up the room. A room, just he was so regal and just so elegant as a man, and so thoughtful. And that was his humility talking. That was him saying, "Look, yes, I'm good at what I do, but it's not going to be enough
No,
just to
it's
be one Black actor. There's got to be more." And that's what we're talking about today, Reggie, is the lack of diversity. At 2020, George Floyd changed the world, and we started this conversation about dismantling structural racism, and Hollywood rushed, with their press releases and, their studies and all their research on how they were going to do that. And I just want to talk about a couple of examples that were really kind of shocking. We just had the Golden Globe Awards. Many people didn't see it because they weren't televised on NBC. NBC boycotted because the LA Times did an expose and exposed that, the Foreign Associated Press had no Black members, no people of color, all white membership judging these films that were selected for this prestigious award. How shocking was that for us to learn that?
it's really interesting because you asked your first guest how shocking it was for some of the findings, and it's not shocking. It's not shocking. And what may surprise you, we're having a lot of talk about how the demographics are going to change. But right now, the demographics are still in favor of white folks. And any numbers you look at, either the census from 2020 to static, I think it is, it'll be somewhere between 57 and 67% still white. So what does that mean? How does that impact what we're talking about today? That means that the people in power are not trying to give up that power. So when you're looking at, you talked about green lighting projects, you talk about Black folks being in these prestigious organizations, it's not surprising that those numbers wouldn't be where they need to be. What I will say, Areva, is that you've done a lot of work in this area, and you know that diversity is not enough. Your guests have already talked about this. Getting the numbers in there is not enough. And so the next thing is that people will say, well, what about inclusion? Well, inclusion is important because it's that voice, it's that agency, it's the ability to be able to make some changes and when you're in the room. But then there's this whole thing about equity. And that's the one that's the touchy one for people, because equity starts to talk about money.
Yeah.
Equity starts to talk about money. And when we start talking about money, we are going to have some difficult conversations. And those conversations permeate the conversations we're having about equality and diversity in Hollywood.
Well, that's what Dr. Darnell Hunt's report found, is that at the senior level management, where the money is, the folks who are making the money, the folks who are deciding the budgets for the projects, that those are the areas that have been the most resistant to change. And what Dr. Hunt told me is he takes the report every year and they go around from, studio to studio and, lay out the findings for them and tell them where they're doing a good job and tell them where they're, falling down. And I asked him, I said, so when you get to the point about the executives and, money on projects and green lighting projects, I said, what do they say? He says, well, they basically say we're going to look at it. We'll take that under consideration. Thank you for sharing that with us. But, every year that has been the area where you've seen the least amount of change, the least willingness to open up, and to bring in more people of color and to give them not just the title, but to actually give them real power and real responsibility. I do want to ask you, though, a lot of debacles we've seen around this whole equity and how do you get to this place of diversity and inclusion. I think The Bachelor show on ABC is one of those shows. They had their first Black bachelor, Matt James, big news that we, after all the years of this show, you get a Black bachelor. He picks a white woman, Rachel is going to be the girl he picks. And then we learn that Rachel has a past, and Rachel's social media shows her at some plantation parties and, in some other questionable activities. And then the white host, Chris Harrison, goes on a podcast and defends her. And ABC, scrambles, and, Chris is out. He loses his job. But then they replace Chris with Jesse Palmer, white guy, nice guy. I actually know Jesse. I've worked with him before. No, nothing against Jesse. And then the Bachelor this year is a white guy. So how do we go from fired Chris because Chris supports Rachel, who goes to plantation parties, to now back to white host, white bachelor?
Yeah, it's who knows. You asked me, was I surprised? Was I surprised at that as well? I'm not surprised. I think the way we get there is that the when we start talking about love and the depiction of people loving each other, black on black love is a tough one to sell. It's a tough one to sell in Hollywood, and it's absolutely a tough one to sell on TV. Sidney Poitier, just to go back, you know, when you look at him, Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, that was it was such a breakthrough role for this black man to be saying, hey, I like this black woman. So
white woman.
I like this white woman, excuse me, thank you. So I'm not surprised that you still are trying to have a white franchise as it relates to the commodity of love.
Okay, so you thought Matt might have been just an anomaly, and Matt couldn't really pick a black girl because a black couple is not going to sell. And now we're back to the Bachelor does better when you have a white host and a white guy bachelor.
That's what I think. But as you know, we had a black bachelorette, and her finalists were all black men. Right. So I'm not saying you can never get there. I'm just talking about the franchise in general. Would that be the franchise that they'd want to sell and believe that will sell and make money for their sponsors? I don't think we're there yet. I don't think we're there yet. I think when you look at advertising, you'll see a lot of black and white couples, but you fight hard to say, well, wait a minute, where are the black couples? Where's the black on black love? Your prior guest mentioned Brown Sugar. Oh my goodness, I love that movie, and I could just talk about that for days, but I know you got 100 more questions for me, so I'm gonna be quiet.
No, that's a great movie. But, you know, it's interesting that you say that about the interracial couples in commercials, because I interviewed another media expert a while back on KBLA, and actually he was on a special report too. And he said he went and did a study of all the commercials, and there was this huge shift from all white couples to now mixed couples. And he said he was hard pressed to find this period where there were black couples. He said it just didn't exist, even to the point of family members now showing black parents who have white kids, or white parents who have black kids, but not showing the intact, as Donnell talked about, not showing a black man with a black father, or, you know, a black couple. He said that Hollywood kind of skipped over that and says, we're going to do diversity and inclusion, but we're going to include black people in white families.
Absolutely. And it's very bothersome for me. I worked in the advertising industry for over 30 years, and it's very, very bothersome to me about not showing the black family. There is a rise in interracial couples, so I have no problem with that you're showing that. That's great. I do want to speak to something that one of your guests talked about in terms of both of your guests talked about having different stories. Somebody like a Issa Rae was successful because that is a different story. People flocked to that show because they saw something different, not the same type of struggle that you see when we talk about slave movies or not having money or whatever. Just regular everyday people, but different regular everyday people.
Well, it's interesting because Dr. Hunt's study also found that black people are the biggest consumer of television, and that they watch more television shows when those shows have more black people in them, like Issa Rae's show and others. And he said that makes the economic case for having more blacks in shows, which is probably why we're seeing, you know, more in front of the camera. He says, but that still has not made the case to those executives about why there should be more blacks in positions of power making those decisions. So they'll hire more black actors and put them in shows, but they're still not hiring those folks to make the decisions about the stories that get told.
I don't know if Hollywood's afraid that what's going to happen is a total flip, is that when you put black executives in place, that all of a sudden it'll be all black this, all black that. And so, and what it has shown is generally all black doesn't sell, especially at the box office. Is that you look at movies like Passing, King Richard, The Harder They Fall, that was a different case, but you look at them in their theatrical runs, theatrically, they don't make a lot of money. So as an exec, the exec is like, we'll make those movies to pacify that particular audience, but the white audience still looks at black movies or movies with all black characters as for black people. That's for black people. That's not for us. And so what really needs to change, you asked the question about what really needs to change. We don't need white people as saviors, but we do need them as advocates to change and shift their thinking about the agency, the way in which we look at black families and black people. We need them to shift that in a way that says, oh, that's an all black cast. That doesn't mean that that's not for me, that that's not something, there's not a universal story there for me to see and for me to enjoy.
I'm glad you said that. And let's go back to King Richard for a minute, because King Richard is the movie. Will Smith plays Richard Williams, the father of Venus and Serena Williams. Movie's getting lots of acclaim. I think it did win a Golden Globe Award, and there's, Oscar buzz for Will Smith. And it's a movie about two black tennis players that have transcended, in some ways, race. It's a universal story of overcoming obstacles, the American dream, starting from the bottom and working their way up to the top, being the world's, highest paid tennis players, maybe Serena, one of the world's highest paid athletes across all sports. Why wouldn't that kind of universal story, particularly given how many white fans Venus and Serena in tennis is predominantly a white sport. So we know that predominantly their fans are white. So why wouldn't that story translate?
So you just trying to set me up for a overhead smash, right? I believe it's about black men. Black men don't have the type of agency in Hollywood. We got 10, maybe 7 or 8 black men that you can name on your hand that are going to get a role and they're going to do something. But we're talking about Richard Williams, who pissed people off. I'm not going to see that. This dude, so we're talking about a movie that's supposed to vindicate him? Nah, I'm not doing that.
Well, it's funny because on Twitter, there's a big fight between some white feminists about saying, why is a movie about Venus and Serena centered around a man? And black folks, they just went dead off. Black Twitter went crazy saying, first of all, it's Venus and Serena's story. They're executive producers on the story. They get to tell whatever story they want to tell. And we need to see the positive side of Richard Williams, because despite the antics and whatever else Richard did, Richard produced, two of the world's greatest athletes. And very few people, white or black, can say they've done anything remotely close to what Richard Williams did. And his family, ex-wife and children, give him the credit for doing that. So they're not confused about how they got where they got. Venus and Serena are very clear about that. White feminists had issues with Richard Williams being the star in his daughter's story that they co-signed on.
Absolutely. I do want to say, Areva, before we get out of here, because is that when we talk about diversity, I'd be a hypocrite to be here to talk to you about diversity and not talk about Latinx and not talk about our Native Americans and Asians, because what happens is that we kind of get siloed and we get so focused on just one aspect of that, and it's a problem. So there's 2 things that I want to say. One, I don't want to hear anything else about BIPOC. You know why I don't want to hear about BIPOC? Because BIPOC is not specific. Is that BIPOC is general. So when we say BIPOC, we don't get into the real numbers. So now what I really want to know, how many black people you got? How many Native Americans do you have? How many Asian people do you have? How many Latin people do you have? I want to get specific. Sometimes we get so general that we get away from the specificity of diversity. And I think that that's a problem in the field of diversity today.
I got to ask you, we're running out of time, but The Harder They Fall, ensemble cast, one of the best ensemble casts probably ever put together. Men, women, A-list actors. Is that movie, you talked about movies not doing well at the box office. How did that movie do? the
So,
theatrical run.
so you got to see this one at home. So this was the HBO joint. So most people saw it
Right.
at home, and they haven't released the numbers of how people saw it. But what I will say is that James Samuels was brilliant in this. He wrote it, he co-wrote it, he thought about it in his mind, he directed it as well. And the agency by which he gave women, and you talked about this, is that Zazie Bates and Regina King, they weren't just pretty faces to be here, but he also combined historical figures. These were historical figures that didn't live during the same time period, but he just did a masterful job of doing that. And that soundtrack, that's bumping. So all I gotta say is just get that soundtrack. It is a great ensemble cast, and I think it's up for a couple of awards for some other agencies as well as it relates to ensemble cast. And I'm really glad that he did it in the Western setting, because a lot of people are like, it's not a Western. Oh, okay, whatever. Good film, and I'm really glad, proud of what he did with that.
Yeah, no doubt the soundtrack is absolutely incredible. Everyone should pick it up if you haven't, and watch the movie if you haven't. Quick prediction, Reggie. We're 18 months to almost 2 years out from George Floyd's murder. From all the pronouncements about diversity and inclusion, any predictions about what we're going to see in 2022? We're going to be still having the Oscars so white conversation come March when the Oscars happen. Are we going to still have those conversations?
We are going to have those conversations, and the reason that we're going to have those conversations is because of what I said before, is that the white press needs to actually value those stories, and I don't know that they are. Everybody's talking about Power of the Dog and Licorice Pizza. I like pizza, but I don't like licorice on my pizza. And this was not the pizza that I liked. But these are the movies that are bubbling to the top: Power of the Dog, Licorice Pizza. But are we talking about Passing? Are we talking about King Richard? Are we talking about The Harder They Fall? There's a little smatterings of that, but not as much. And then last thing is that somebody mentioned to you about hair and makeup and making sure that we have people throughout that. And we just talked to Shirley Ralph about this. She said she was in Canada, and they still didn't have the hairdressers and the types of people that she needed to be able to do their hair. So we got a lot of work to do. We have made progress. So let's not say we haven't. But the prediction is we're gonna be disappointed, just like we were with the Golden Globes, just like we were with the Emmys, just like we were with. We're gonna be disappointed. But there are gonna be some breakthroughs along the way.
Wow, great way to end this. Thank you so much, Reggie. So many great insights. We're going to be watching, obviously, what happens with the Oscars this year. Progress is progress. We have to celebrate the progress and keep fighting the fight. I mean, that's what we do, right? That's what resilience looks like. So again, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
For joining me this morning. I'll see you on radio, hopefully. Martin out loud.
I see you soon. See you soon.
Take care. I want to thank all of my guests this morning. What an interesting, enriching, and empowering conversation. These were some amazing guests. I learned so much and got a little disappointed, but also encouraged. Again, we're not where we want to be or where we need to be, but we are making progress, and we are making progress because we are standing up. We're speaking out, like Donnell, who, had the courage to go to that writers group and say, look, we need more authentic stories for the characters on this, daytime soap operas. Folks like Cindy and her organization who are going inside these studios and giving them the raw data, the numbers. We know numbers matter. And folks like Reggie who are speaking out and helping us interpret and understand what's happening in Hollywood. Just want to thank them again and thank all of you. Just some words to live by before I get out. Growth is painful. Change is painful. But nothing is as painful as staying stuck somewhere that doesn't serve you well. It doesn't serve the entertainment industry well to have an ongoing problem with diversity, inclusion, and equity. And yes, change is very painful and growth is painful, but we can get there. We've already proven that we can make progress. We just have to stay the course and keep making that progress. I'm out. Y'all be safe out there. Wear your mask, get your booster shot, and remember, we're all in this together.